Have you ever stared at your bank account showing $100,000 and wondered if you are actually rich or just really good at pretending to be? Most people think hitting six figures means they have finally made it to the finish line. But here's the uncomfortable truth that most financial headlines conveniently forget to mention. That $100,000 sitting in your account is not the end of the race. It is actually the starting gun for a race you did not even know you were running. My name is Robert, and I spend a lot of time thinking about money, the power of time, and why most retirement plans seem to fall apart when people need them the most. If you are someone who wants to understand how money actually works instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, you are in the right place. Today, I am going to prove to you that once you hit $100,000, you are not just 10% of the way to becoming a millionaire. You are actually much closer than that. The mathematics behind this idea are so surprising that most people refuse to believe them, even when you show them the actual numbers. We are talking about a mathematical principle that has been creating wealth for decades, yet somehow most people either do not understand it or think it is too good to be true. The secret lies in understanding something that sounds almost boring until you realize it is the most powerful force on the planet. I am talking about compound interest, which many wise investors call the eighth wonder of the world. Whether you are 55, 65, or already retired, understanding this shift will change how you view every single dollar you own. Those who understand compound interest earn it, while those who do not understand it end up paying it. Let me show you exactly how this works with some real numbers that might make you want to check your balance immediately. Imagine you decide to invest $500 every single month. That is $6,000 per year, which is not pocket change, but it is also not an impossible amount for a dedicated adult to find. We are talking about what many people spend on eating out, fancy cable packages, and impulse purchases without even thinking about it. Assuming your investments earn an average return of 8% annually, which is a conservative estimate based on history, here is where things get interesting. It takes approximately 12 long years of consistent monthly contributions to reach your first $100,000. 12 years might sound like forever when you are just starting out, but think about it this way. Time is going to pass anyway, whether you are building a legacy or just letting it slip through your fingers. During those first 12 years, most of the money in your account comes directly from your own hard work. You are essentially doing all the heavy lifting while compound interest is still getting warmed up in the corner. Out of that first $100,000, roughly $84,000 comes from your own monthly contributions. The remaining $16,000 represents the actual returns your money has generated for you. It is not a life-changing amount of growth yet, and this is where most people make a critical mistake. They look at those numbers after a decade of hard work and think the process is too slow to be worth it. They get discouraged because the returns do not seem impressive enough to change their lifestyle today. What they do not realize is that they have just completed the hardest and most painful part of the entire journey. They have built the foundation that will support everything that comes next, and that foundation is about to start working much harder for them than they ever worked for their money. Remember, the goal is total financial independence, and you have just hit that first six-figure milestone. In traditional linear thinking, you would assume you are only 10% of the way to a million, but the mathematics of wealth do not work in a straight line. The truth is far more encouraging and frankly more exciting than that. From this point forward, your money starts working exponentially harder for you every single day. Those investment returns that seem so small during the first 12 years begin to snowball in ways that will genuinely surprise you. The next big milestone is $200,000. And here is the part that will make you want to rethink your entire strategy. It only takes about 6 more years to double that first 100,000. Let me repeat that because it is the most important part of this entire lesson. It took 12 years to go from 0 to 100,000, but only 6 additional years to reach 200,000. The time it took to grow has been cut exactly in half. At this point, you are sitting on $200,000 and the mathematics are starting to shift heavily in your favor. Compound interest is finally beginning to flex its muscles. Of that $200,000, you have personally contributed roughly $120,000. The other $80,000 is pure investment growth. money you did not have to work for. Your money has been quietly working in the background, earning returns on top of returns. Suddenly, those gains are becoming large enough to pay for your basic living expenses. But here is the part that will absolutely change your perspective on retirement. Even though you have only reached $200,000, you are actually more than halfway to becoming a millionaire in terms of time. This is why reaching that first 100,000 is the most important thing you will ever do for your future self. The reason this works is that wealth growth is exponential, not linear. Each dollar of growth generates its own future growth, creating an accelerating effect that picks up speed over time. It is exactly like pushing a heavy boulder up a very steep mountain. The beginning is brutal, exhausting, and feels like you are making no progress at all. But once you reach that peak and the boulder starts rolling down the other side, momentum takes over. Now you might be wondering what happens during the final stretch toward that $1 million goal. This is where things get really exciting and honestly a little bit addictive for those who love security. During the next 15 years, compound interest becomes the dominant force in your life. By the time you hit the 35-year mark, you have reached that seven-figure milestone. You have personally contributed approximately $210,000 over 3 decades. But your account balance shows over $1 million. That means more than 75% of your total wealth came from growth rather than your own labor. Your money is now generating roughly $80,000 per year just from investment returns alone. Remember how long it took you to accumulate that first $100,000? Now you are generating almost that much every single year without lifting a finger. This is when people finally start to understand why the wealthy look so relaxed even during a crisis. Their money is working harder than most people do at their actual 40-hour-a-week jobs. The acceleration becomes even more dramatic as you move beyond the $1 million mark. By year 40, you are looking at over $2 million, and your investments are generating massive annual returns. At this point, your money is making more money each year than most people earn in their entire careers. You could literally stop working today and maintain a comfortable lifestyle forever. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking about inflation, market crashes, and the fact that you might not have $500 a month. These are fair questions, and they are the questions that separate those who build wealth from those who make excuses. Let us address the biggest concern first, which is inflation. The 8% return I have been using is actually adjusted for the rising cost of living. The stock market has historically returned closer to 10% annually, but we are being conservative for safety. Nobody wants to plan their retirement based on a fantasy that everything will be perfect. As for market crashes, yes, they will happen. Your account balance will go down sometimes, and it will feel very uncomfortable. In fact, it will probably go down quite a bit during certain periods, and you will question your decisions. But here is something interesting that most people do not realize about downturns. Market drops actually help you if you are consistently investing over the long run. When prices drop, your monthly contribution buys more shares of great companies. When the market recovers, and it always has historically, those extra shares become incredibly valuable. It is exactly like shopping for groceries when everything you buy is suddenly on sale for 40% off. Sure, it might feel scary to keep buying when the news is bad, but rational investors understand that temporary pain leads to long-term gain. The people who panic and sell during a crash are essentially buying high and selling low. That is the exact opposite of what successful people do with their resources. Now let us talk about that claim that you cannot find $500 per month to save. I hear this a lot, and while everyone has a different situation, most people underestimate how much money is leaking out of their lives. The average American household spends a massive amount of money on things that do not provide long-term value. If you could reduce your dining out or your expensive car payment by just a small amount, you would find that money. The average car payment in America is now over $800 per month. $800 for something that gets less valuable every single day you own it. That is like paying rent on an asset that is slowly disappearing. If you could find a reliable used vehicle and cut that payment in half, you would have enough to fund your future. I am not suggesting you should live like a monk or drive a car that is falling apart, but I am suggesting that most people have more flexibility in their budgets than they want to admit. The problem is that we have become accustomed to lifestyle expectations that are not based on logic. We have confused our wants with our actual needs so thoroughly that we think luxury is a fact of life. Here is something else that makes this whole process easier than you might expect. As your investment account grows, something psychological happens that accelerates your progress. You start to notice the monthly growth in your balance, and it becomes genuinely exciting to watch. Instead of viewing investing as a sacrifice, you begin to see it as the most rewarding thing you do. This excitement motivates you to look for even more ways to boost your contributions. Maybe you decide to invest your tax refund instead of spending it on a new gadget. Perhaps you redirect a raise at work toward your investments instead of increasing your lifestyle. When you see your money growing by thousands of dollars each month without effort, finding ways to feed that growth becomes a priority. The wealthy think differently about time, and they think differently about their capital. They understand that every single dollar has the potential to become multiple dollars through the magic of compounding. That expensive dinner tonight is not just costing you $100 today, it is potentially costing you several $100s in lost growth over the coming decades. Reaching that $100,000 milestone is a massive psychological game changer. There is something magical that happens when you see a six-figure balance for the first time. Suddenly, the concept of becoming a millionaire shifts from a distant fantasy to a realistic possibility. Before you hit 100,000, your returns might only generate a few $100s a year. That is nice, but it is not going to pay the mortgage or the medical bills. Once you cross that threshold, your annual returns can easily exceed $10,000. In exceptional years, you might see gains of $20,000 or more. These are not theoretical numbers anymore. They are real money that provides real security. This is when you finally understand why financial experts talk about compound interest with such respect. But it is not just about the math, it is about the habits and the discipline you develop to get there. The person who successfully saves and invests their first 100,000 has proven they can delay gratification. They have proven they can stick to a plan even when the world is screaming for them to spend. These character traits are more valuable than the money itself. There is also the factor of opportunity to consider. When you have substantial savings invested, you gain options that simply do not exist for other people. Maybe a better job opportunity comes along, but it requires you to take a small risk. Without financial reserves, you cannot take that risk because you need every penny to survive. With a solid investment foundation, you can afford to bet on yourself and your own talents. Perhaps you have always wanted to start a small business or travel to a place you love. These scenarios happen all the time, but they are only available to people who have built up their resources. The beautiful irony is that the same habits that got you to 100,000 make the journey to a million inevitable. You have already learned how to live below your means and how to weather the storms of the market. As your income naturally increases throughout your career, your contributions will likely grow as well. The early habit of consistent investing creates the foundation for a much faster journey later in life. It is like learning to ride a bicycle. Once you master the balance, you can go much faster without falling. But here is something most financial advisors will never tell you. The hardest part of this entire process is not picking the right stock or understanding the charts. The hardest part is having the discipline to stay the course when everything around you is telling you to stop. We live in a culture that worships instant results and instant pleasure. The idea of waiting decades for a result sounds impossible to most people today. They would rather finance a luxury lifestyle today than build a fortress of security for tomorrow. This is why most people never build real wealth despite living in a prosperous society. It is not because they do not earn enough money, although that is the excuse they prefer to tell themselves. It is because they have never learned to wait long enough for the magic of compound interest to work. They are like children in a candy store with their allowance, spending it all as soon as they get it. The people who do build wealth are not necessarily smarter or more talented than you are. They just have a different relationship with time, and they understand the value of a dollar. They understand that boring consistency beats exciting speculation every single time. While others are chasing the latest trend or trying to time the market perfectly, successful investors are quiet. They are simply adding to their index funds month after month and year after year. The math I have shown you today is actually very conservative. In reality, your wealth building will likely accelerate even faster as you get better at managing your life. Your employer might offer a matching contribution to your retirement plan, which is free money. You might receive bonuses or gifts that can be added to your foundation to speed things up. Your $100,000 is not just sitting there looking pretty in your account. It is actually the financial equivalent of a seeds planted in fertile soil. If you leave it alone and give it water and sun, it will grow into a massive tree that provides shade for your entire family. The math does not lie even when it seems too good to be true. Time and compound interest are working in your favor every second of every day. But they can only do their job if you stop making excuses and actually give them the chance to work. Start today, stay consistent, and watch as your first 100,000 turns into a legacy of freedom.